Now before we begin, I just want to call a local Subaru dealer in this case. I want to see what they charge for a head gasket replacement. My guess is probably at least $2,000. It's a pretty big job on the Subaru, but let's find out.
Good afternoon, Randy Subaru Service. How can I help you?
Hi, good afternoon. Just a general question. I have a 2010 Subaru Impreza, and the head gaskets are starting to leak. Any idea roughly what that would run to replace them?
What was the year and the model?
It's a 2010 Impreza non-turbo. And I won't hold you to it. I'm just kind of curious what they go for.
Yeah, of course. Give me 1 second.
Thank you.
Keep holding up, so it'll run around 2,500.
All right, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye. So that's pretty much what I was expecting. Ultimately, if you did not see the previous videos, we removed the engine from the vehicle, removed the cylinder heads, had them machined, reinstall everything, put it back in the car. So chances are that kind of work, that includes a timing belt, the pulleys, cleaning all the surfaces off. So 2,500 bucks, okay? So what did it cost me to do it here in my home garage? Now this may really help a number of you out there, especially, and I've said this in the past, with COVID, you may be furloughed, you're looking to save some cash. And really, it was not hard. It really, honestly, was not a hard job. There's a lot of steps, and I try to just take my time and show step by step and how to clearly state on how to do everything. So if you haven't seen the video, or there's really a couple of them, I'll include a link in the description box below to a Subaru repair list, and you'll see all the videos in there if you want to check it out. So this is what I spent, okay? Now some of these things you may already have, and if that's the case, obviously you're going to save some money, but the biggest cost by far was servicing the cylinder heads. In other words, when you remove the cylinder heads, it's really highly recommended you bring them to a machine shop, because they will not only clean them, but they will pressure check them. In other words, make sure that the valves are in good shape, make sure that there's no warpage. And the cost to do that was $410 for both heads. Okay, now if you just want to clean them, I think it was $105 a head just to clean them, and then to pressure test them altogether was $410. So that's what I did. Now there are some people, you know, they'll just clean them and put everything back together and roll the dice. You could do that, but ultimately the way I see it is why do all this work if you can have trouble down the road that you can prevent now. So spend the money, $400 in my case, and it was done and over with. So that was the biggest expense by far. The second thing is really the engine crane that you may already have. Maybe you could borrow one from a neighbor. The engine crane and the engine stand. Now this is sort of interesting if you plan on doing a job like this. My plan was to get, really what I did in the video is I got to a point where the engine was ready to be removed from the vehicle, and I figured let me just go to Harbor Freight, purchase an engine crane, and call it a day. Well, it was sort of interesting. It was an eye-opening event because the 5 nearest Harbor Freights did not have any engine cranes in stock. They had pieces of them, but not the complete unit, because typically it's 2 boxes to put everything together, to assemble it. So I lucked out and I was able to find one on Facebook Marketplace for $150, a 2-ton engine hoist for 150 bucks. So that turned out okay. And then the engine stand I was able to get for 50 bucks as well. Engine stands you can find easily on Amazon, Jegs, Summit Racing. That's not an issue. Even Walmart sells a number of them. The engine hoist is different. Now you may have Northern Tool near you. I don't. They're about 6-7 hours from me. So Facebook Marketplace worked out okay. So with the cylinder heads and the engine hoist and the engine stand, I'm at $610 right there. Then the head gasket kit, that's essentially all of the gaskets. So not only the head gaskets, the two head gaskets, but the valve cover gaskets. In my case, I also did the oil pan gasket. They give you a gasket for the throttle body. They give you a gasket for the spark plug tubes, gaskets for everything. That was $150. I went with Felt Pro. Everyone has their own choice or preference. No problem so far. It's been about a month since I did the job and still okay. And I've had no issues with Felt Pro in the past, so that works okay. So $150 for that. So now we're at 610, 710, 760 altogether. And then I had to get, obviously because we're doing the job, I replaced the timing belt and all the pulleys. That was around $100. And then the two other things really. One is a Sprocket Tool. The Sprocket Tool is really optional. That was almost $60. I purchased it because it makes the job a lot easier. You can use a strap wrench, which is like $12. But it's a lot harder, in my opinion, to remove the sprocket from the camshaft without a Sprocket Tool, a tool specifically made to remove and install the sprocket. So it is on the high end. I purchased it. Again, I'm the type of person that if it saves me time, I'll invest in the tool so I can move on. So let that be as it may. So that was $60. And then the last thing I purchased, I did have a torque wrench, but it was like 7 years old, and I didn't want to take the risk that maybe it's just worn out. So I purchased a torque wrench for $40. So altogether, in my case, everything in was $961. That includes the torque wrench, the sprocket tool, the timing belt and the pulleys, the gasket kit, the engine crane, the engine stand, and the work on the heads. Regarding all the other tools, which really you don't need a lot, if you have a good mechanic set, in other words, a 3/8 drive and 1/2-inch drive ratchet, you have a couple of sockets, there aren't a lot of sizes that you need really anyway. A 12 millimeter, a 10 millimeter wrench, 14 certainly. I don't think there was a 17 anywhere, but certainly 12 and 14 wrenches for sure. Make sure you get the long handles because, for example, in the torque converter fasteners, you need a long handle because you'll scrape your hand like crazy if you don't have a long handle. But if you have just a good basic set from like DeWalt, Craftsman, Snap-on is expensive, but if you have Snap-on, Husky, Cobalt, Amazon even has their own tools now, whatever the case may be, you'll be perfectly fine. Again, your neighbor, I'm sure, can even help you out. You do need a floor jack for sure because you have to jack up the transmission as well when you do the job. But ultimately, that's what it cost me, $961. So easily you save over half the cost, without a doubt. And this is, in my opinion, more important. You learn about your vehicle. Because there's so many things you have to remove when you do this job. So now you know how to remove the throttle body if you have a problem. Now you know how to do the valve cover gaskets, what it looks like, what does a cylinder head look like, what do the valves look like. So in other words, down the road, all the sensors you have to disconnect. So down the road, if you have a problem, you'll know exactly where everything is. And that's key because it will save you really, in this case, you could say, okay, it's $2,500 to replace the head gaskets. It cost me around $1,000. But in the long run, when something else happens, now I know where that part sits on the vehicle. I don't have to pay someone for that. And that's where, in the long run, you save a ton of money. Take my word from it. I have not been to a mechanic since I was 18 years old. So take that. Hey, buddy. So, but yeah, so that's what it costs for everything. Thank you for those comments. I just wanted to upload this video because a lot of you asked what it cost to do the job. And we'll see you next time.